worst ones I made was where you're dealing with human beings because you're backing bands and you're hoping that they're going to succeed.
Bands are like a marriage.
And there's 4 or 5 people in a band.
Yeah.
And if they decide they don't want to play or don't do something, you're stuck.
Yeah.
It's not a widget, it's a human being. And so lessons learned there about, when you're working with people, there's so many things that can go wrong. Even if you think the result will be this, suddenly someone just says, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Welcome to Future Squared, the podcast all about corporate innovation, entrepreneurship, and self-improvement. My name is Steve Glaveski, and each week I'll bring you conversations with thought leaders such as Kevin Kelly, Brad Feld, Steve Blank, Gretchen Rubin, Tim Harford, Adam Grant, Tim O'Reilly, Tyler Cowan, and many, many more on topics that will help you gain a distinct advantage, not only in the world of creativity and innovation, but in your entire professional and personal life. Each and every Friday, I'll bring you Fast Fix Friday, some short, high-impact and easily digestible insights to have you finishing your week on a high. Future Squared is powered by Collective Campus, a corporate innovation school, consultancy and startup accelerator that works with large organizations to help them unlock their people's often latent potential to create more impact for humanity and lead more fulfilling lives. If your organization needs help coming up with ideas, testing and turning those ideas into reality, creating a culture of innovation, or partnering with startups, visit collectivecampus.io. So without further ado, let's get into today's podcast.
Welcome back to Future Squared for episode number 230 with Jon Satterley. Jon is an experienced entertainment and media industry executive and thought leader. He's been recognized as an innovator with expert knowledge of new products, emerging tech, and digital business strategy. When he was just 17, Jon started a record label and wound up signing hundreds of bands while still studying to get his law degree. Jon led digital strategy for Roadrunner Records, growing from a small independent record company to becoming one of the world's leading labels. Today, Jon is the Chief Digital Officer at Village Roadshow, and we've been working together on the Xperience Accelerator, a program that brings together startups working with VR and AR technology with Village to develop new applications for the entertainment industry. We explored lots of questions during this conversation, often going off on tangents. And 3 things you can expect to learn include 1, why Jon decided to pursue his record label instead of a career in law, and what helped him shun societal expectations in favor of taking the path less traveled. 2, how to be a successful entrepreneur in a large organization. And 3, what the future of VR and AR might look like. Of course, as a big heavy metal fan myself, we also spent some time talking about Jon's time at Roadrunner Records. So with that, I bring you Jon Satterley. Welcome to the show, Jon.
Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you here in CC's amazing studios, aka a meeting room.
Yeah.
But that's such are the wonders of modern technology where all we need is a laptop, an $80 mic, Audacity, and away we go, and we're beaming to the entire world. So absolutely love that. I understand you just got back from overseas.
Yeah, I just, it's been 3 trips to LA in 3 months, and the last one also included, I drove to Vegas from LA. It was a bit of fun.
Yeah, what did that take about?
It's about 4 hours.
4 hours?
Yeah, because they opened the world's biggest, although they say this, probably there are some in China, the world's biggest esports arena.
Yeah.
At the Luxor Casino in Las Vegas.
Americans tend to do that though, right? So they've got the Baseball World Series, which is just American teams.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it holds, it's very impressive. I mean, it would probably have around 3,000 people if you stuff them in.
Yeah.
When I was there for the opening night, it might have had about 1,000 VIP guests and everything else. And, whether it's the biggest or not, one thing is for sure, it's certainly, I'd have to say it'd be the plushest, schmickest. It's off the charts. I mean, it's just, it's the dream of any sort of fan of video games and esport. It's like it's the cathedral. What's that line from Smith and Walensky Steak? It's like if video games is a religion, that place is the cathedral.
Right. So kind of like the Colosseum in 100 AD. It's the place to be.
It is. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So I went and checked it out, and we're talking with folks about what we could be doing in esports in Australia.
Yeah, so I guess for our audience, some of them who may not be familiar with esports, we're talking about spectator video games.
That's right, competitive video games and people watching it. I mean, probably anyone who, most techie folks know where it's at. Anyone under 30 pretty much, or certainly anyone under 15 that's living and breathing this thing. It's just a cultural phenomenon. I mean, we know where Fortnite is today. I mean, that game it reminds me of, I'm old enough to remember when Pac-Man went berserk in the early 80s. It feels like Fortnite's in a Pac-Man moment. It's like everywhere I go, I'm hearing about Fortnite. Kids are being, obsessed playing it. It's huge.
Yeah, and it's funny, you're seeing a lot of, whether it's media organisations, sports teams, investing into esports. So even in the Australian Football League, I know the Adelaide Crows recently invested into. That's right. Or they acquired their own esports organisation. Yeah. So it seems to be a lot of interest in the space. I mean, are you bullish?
Yeah, I am. I mean, it's sort of like there is a bit of a land grab at the moment.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is there's some really long-term established esports players in Australia that have been doing a great job for a long time. Yeah. And now that it seems like there's a sniff on the wind of esports emerging in, say, the West, because it's been around for forever in Asia, that now there's a really big move from what they're calling non-endemic kind of companies wanting to jump in. And for Village Roadshow, we think our rightful place in esports is, we've always been about places for people to go to be entertained. And that's why I love the arena idea, because that's sort of, in line with our DNA is people going out. And people want to go out and watch esports. Sure, that people play esports and play video games at home or join online tournaments, but I think this idea of people going out and having a social experience around esports is really interesting.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there with the social experience aspect of it. I mean, we're staring down the cusp of transitioning to virtual reality environments and whatnot, but I know even a lot of the people that are building these experiences are looking to incorporate, say, human-like avatars where you're in the game, but you can actually see your friend and you can converse with them rather than just being in your own little world, because people still want to have that social aspect when they head out.
Well, VR is a lonely experience. Yes. It can be quite... one of the first VR experiences I had was Sony PlayStation VR with the Worlds disc that gives you a few things, including the best VR experience I think ever, which is London Heist. But I remember the first one was where you're getting just dropped into you're in a deep sea tank and you're getting sort of lowered into the ocean. And it's pretty profound experience when you've not had VR before, how real it feels. But also, a bit lonely and a bit odd, a bit discombobulating. You're there sort of floating in this alien universe of the deep sea ocean, and I could see how that could get tired if we're not having that. People seek social, and there's been attempts in VR to create online social. What is it? Not VR cafe. There's that well-known one that struggled for a bit. I think it almost went out of business, and they got resurrected, got bought. But places where people can go and meet others, and even just do almost like real life things, like go and in VR play Dungeons and Dragons in VR, but you're actually playing the real game. But you're actually playing with your avatar, which is weird. But what's weird to me, maybe not weird to...
Exactly.
I mean, not weird, it's just ways people are finding, their place in VR.
And I think, like most things, I mean, if you go back to the early days of the World Wide Web, the applications that came thereafter were probably something we never would have imagined back in, say, 1993.
Of course.
And so the same, I dare say, would apply with VR, where over the next 5, 10, 15 years, we're going to see a lot of different applications emerge in this space.
Well, I mean, same with iPhones. Now you thought it was just a sexy way to make a phone call.
Exactly.
And look where we are today. So, I mean, I was playing PUBG on my phone yesterday. I mean, that's mind-blowing. To think that you could play a game of that level of sophistication, multiplayer, 100 folks on the island on your phone. Who would have ever thought
that? I have no idea what you're talking about there, because I'm definitely not one who plays games on a mobile phone. If anything, it's always just podcasts and audiobooks and listening to metal, as you appreciate.
I tried that too.
Before we deep dive into the world of VR, AR, entertainment, media, and so on, maybe we'll just give our audience the 2,000, maybe not even the 2,000 foot view, maybe the 10,000 foot view of who Jon Satterley is
Yeah.
and how did you come to be the Chief Digital Officer
Sure.
of Village Digital?
Okay, so I've been with Village Roadshow for about 5.5 years.
Yeah.
And prior to that, I was in the music industry for about 25 years.
Yeah.
So from about the age of 17 here in Melbourne, I worked in record stores, Greville Records, which still exists, one of the last ones, and Missing Link. And I went to uni, did a law degree and an arts degree, and whilst I was at uni, I worked in stores and I worked for a little independent record company called Siren Records, packing boxes.
Right.
And I set up my own label and signed about a few hundred bands to P&D deals and just did all that while I was at uni.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finished uni, of course, my parents wanted me to be a lawyer, and it was the last thing in the world I wanted to do. So the option was go and be a lawyer or just keep packing those boxes and running a label. And easy choice.
Yeah.
All I wanted to do was be involved in music. I can't play any instruments, but I just wanted to be part of the music business. I was going out every night to see bands, and metal was my life.
Your thing.
And that was my thing.
Yeah.
And
So maybe I'll just stop you there, John, just real quick, because I know a lot of people have come to those sort of crossroads in their lives where it's what society wants me to do, it's what my family wants me to do. And over here I'm packing boxes and maybe I'm not going to make as much money in the short term, but I fucking love it.
That's no doubt. So, well, actually, ironically, I was going to make more money in the short term because to do back in the early 90s to do to become a lawyer, you had to do like an apprenticeship at a law firm, and it was called, I think they still have it, article clerkship.
Yeah.
And back then, I was earning, whatever it was, $250 cash in hand or $300 cash in hand a week. Just cash, here you go. Or it was, and wearing Iron Maiden t-shirt and shorts and, getting drunk, sing bands every night. Yeah. Or put a suit on, go and have to live back with my parents out in Altona and work for, I think it was like $120 a week. Photocopying in a basement for some shitty law firm. Mm-hmm. So actually it wasn't a hard decision financially. Yeah. What was scary was more the existential dread, law looked like a career with a ladder, and back in the early 90s there was, we had a recession and jobs weren't easy to come by. It's not like today where, younger folks are in a job and they just, here for a year and I'll go here. Back then it was like get a job and hang on to it for dear life. Yeah. So it was a bit risky, but I just knew in the end, it's perhaps a bit corny or cliche, but it really was follow the passion, and it was just all I wanted to do was be immersed in the culture of live music and metal and putting bands out and all of that. So I did that, and I went overseas, obligatory year-long sojourn, came back, staring at what was I going to do. I actually got offered the job to go back to the warehouse, and I just took it, just not knowing what else I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And an article in Beat magazine, there was an ad for someone wanting a record company, didn't name which company, looking for a general manager. Right. And I just, through my product catalogue, I had 200 or 300 CDs out on my label by then, chucked the product catalogue in, and a few other things in a letter, and didn't hear from anyone for 2 or 3 months, forgot about it, got a call out of the blue and got a job interview. It was out at Shock Records because they were distributors. Yeah. And I ended up being at the time, the general manager of Roadrunner Records Australia, which was Roadrunner Records, still exists sort of, but back in the mid-90s was the biggest metal label on the planet. Mm-hmm. And so it was just unbelievable that this was a dream come true.
For someone who's a devout metal fan,
that's right.
Heading up Australia's biggest metal label at the time.
Well, the first record I put out on the label, big record, was Sepultura Roots in February 96, and that album came in at number 2, and it was the biggest chart position. It shipped platinum, 70,000 records.
I think I was in year 8 or year 9 at the time, and I still remember that album coming out. Yep.
Yeah, and so that was awesome because it put the label on the map. Even major labels were ringing me up going, holy shit, who are you and what is this? Yeah. And it was exciting times. And then, we had great records, Typo Negative, we had Life of Agony, all these bands, Machine Head, Fear Factory was massive in the sort of mid-late 90s. Demanufacture, Obsolete, they were huge records. And all these records were going gold and platinum. Yeah. And I worked for Roadrunner. I, in time, became the managing director and built the company up. And when I started, it was a $200,000 or $300,000 a year company, and when I left, it was about a $12 million company, and still small in the grand scheme of things, independent label. Yeah. But the big, obviously, for your listeners, the curse or the dream, I see it as the latter, not the former. But the biggest band we had was Nickelback.
Yeah.
We broke them in 2001, and the world changed because from being a small rock metal label, we had the biggest goddamn band on the planet.
I always found Nickelback seemed a little bit out of sorts on Roadrunner.
Well, we always had a rock. More the point was we always had a rock thing. It's just that none of our bands ever blew up.
Yeah.
We were trying to have mainstream success to help the metal stuff, like to grow the label. And nothing actually blew up, but then Nickelback exploded, and the rest is history, to use the cliche. And so then in 2007, the company offered me a gig to go and be part of like the leadership group in New York City and run digital and what was called new media then.
Yeah.
So I took that offer and went with my family and spent 5 years heading up the digital and running, essentially with two others, running the company there for 5 years. And then in 2012, the contract was done, and Warner Music ended up buying Roadrunner Records, and so I worked essentially for Warner. They shut Roadrunner down effectively globally because the music industry was in a lot of strife. Yeah. And my contract was also up at the end of 5 years, so came back to Australia and joined Village Roadshow, where I've been now for 5.5 years.
Fantastic. And as the Chief Digital Officer over at Village Roadshow, what does your role effectively entail?
Well, it's moved a lot over the last 5.5 years. It's been, it started really, I worked initially in Sydney for their distribution company, and it was not Chief Digital Officer, it was like they had a title like Director of E-commerce. Yeah. But that was interesting because they actually didn't have any e-commerce.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so it was sort of more, it's been a journey for me of almost crafting a job for myself and finding where I could add value. And we've moved around, and I've got a team now, and we've changed our orientation depending on what we felt was the best thing at the right time. So we've done things like we ran a multivariate A/B optimization program for our websites to see how we could bring really good e-commerce discipline to the websites that are selling lots of tickets. And we jumped in and repaired some websites that were struggling, and we redid websites from scratch. Yeah. So we're doing a lot of web design and UX UI there. We did, we've done a lot of business strategy articulation, which is something that really means a lot to me. I did an MBA in the mid-2000s, and it was, I sort of thought that maybe my career would move more into that sort of strategy area. And so that's a big part of what I'd like to bring to the company is planning and articulation of where we are today and where we need to be tomorrow. And I see that as a sort of role of Chief Digital Officer as well, as articulate, not just pointing to the future like a soothsayer and saying, the world's changing, it's disruption, and it's not that meaningful.
The end is nigh.
No. You've got to actually prepare and show what the steps you need to take are to get from A to B. And it's hard because you have to... that's why textbooks and bestsellers about disruption I find often miss the mark, because it's very difficult to write a catch-all for everyone. Yeah, that's right. It's because contextual in the culture of the business, and the history of the business, and even the people. Yeah. And so what's good for company A may not be good for company B. Yeah. So I've learned that sometimes the hard way, because just bringing change templates in won't necessarily always work.
Yeah, and we see that a lot in this whole world of corporate innovation, where people fall into the whole law of the instrument bias, where they've probably learnt about, say, design thinking or the lean startup or whatever it is, and they think, okay, this is going to solve all our problems, so if I'm a hammer, everything is a nail, and just try the same thing all the time and just overlook the nuances of your organization, your industry, your culture, everything. And I guess the underlying thing I'm touching on here in this conversation is, you've kind of, going back to your early days when you were 17 years old, set up the label, signed up 200-300 bands, to molding what your role looked like, whether it was at Roadrunner, whether it's at Village. It's this entrepreneurial sort of approach that you've taken.
I haven't been out on my own capital funded startup guy. I haven't really been that. I've been a work from within, been given some resources internally and tried to create something that way.
And I guess
mean, for a lot of our listeners, they might be struggling with that. They might have the desire to create internally, but oftentimes they might find themselves stifled by existing ways of work. So, I mean, how have you managed or tried to find that delicate balance between the entrepreneur and the big organization?
So, well, there's a book that I read quite a few years ago, that was a bit of a life changer. Yeah. And it's called The Power Broker, and it's written by Robert Caro, and it's the story of a guy named Robert Moses, who basically in the first half of the 20th century was responsible for basically building huge chunks of New York City. Yep. And basically opening up Long Island to the city and creating, Jones Beach and the Cross Bronx Expressway, and just basically, the Triborough Bridge. This guy basically built half of the infrastructure that we now see in New York City. Yeah. The story is interesting because he started as, he wasn't an entrepreneur. He worked from within. He was a counsellor, like a guy who wrote the legislation and worked as a public servant. Yeah. And the story is a bit like his decline and fall. There's a rich, incredible story, but what struck me as one of the most fascinating things that motivated me, and I've thought about a lot, was he was able to get so much done, where in the Roosevelt era, there was construction and all that. There was American public funds made billions available to the cities to grow, build the highways, create bridges. There was a huge infrastructure fund, and cities all across America would vie for this money. He consistently got the funding and got things done in this insane bureaucracy. Can you imagine, right? Yeah. And he got it done because, as he describes in the book, goes into great detail, he always had the plans before anyone else ready. Mm-hmm. So he had the blueprints. When the governors of the money were sifting through 50 proposals. Yep. And there's Mickey Mouse proposal from City X saying, we need some money to put a monument up, or, we've got a great idea for a freeway, and then they look at it and it's just, a piece of paper. Mm. And then Moses would come in with, this prospectus and basically say, I've got 20,000 workmen with their shovel in hand ready to start tomorrow. Yeah. And they literally were. Yeah. They just went, Steve, too easy. You get the money. Yeah. Every time he got the money. So the lessons were, how can I, or people listening, how do you get that sort of the money or the imprimatur from the bosses to get stuff done? I think part of it is just showing you can do it, like getting ready and showing you've got the plan ready. Yep. And it's not just pie in the sky 5 years out, but you could say, this is what happens Monday. Yeah. Sign here, this happens Monday. Mm-hmm. Make it easy for the bosses to agree, and make the plan sort of almost inexorable, where they can't deny that this is worthy. So build a business case, don't boil the ocean, 150-page business case, but enough that there's understanding that where my money, if they're the boss going, I'm going to give you some money, I need to know what I'm going to get. Yeah. Now, challenging, because in today's environment, agile is the way, but bear in mind that a lot of old school bosses and finance people don't give a shit about agile, or they pay lip service to it. But when you just say, give me the money and I'll just get on with it, and they go, well, what am I getting for money? And you say, well, it's agile, we'll let you know when we get there. Yeah. They go, no, I need to know what the result will be. So there has to be some consideration here. But if you can provide your stakeholders and the bosses with some sort of clear roadmap, but also I can do this tomorrow, or even show you've been getting some of it done. Yeah. Not sort of a bit of ask forgiveness or whatever, not permission. But show that you've actually got a good deal of it thought out and ready to go. Yeah. You'll usually find that your competitors internally, because it's a competition for resources internally, that you might be leaving a lot of them in the dust because they won't actually have got the plan ready. And so the other thing is I guess the broader context of that is taking an active role. What I see a lot of is, people bitching and moaning about their situation, and passively receiving that as, as just their lot in life.
That victim mentality.
A little bit of victim mentality. Yeah. And I know that this can sort of start to strain into, slightly right-wing kind of the poor guy on the street if he just got off his ass. I'm not saying that. I'm confining this into more of a work context where you've got people who 3 or 4 years doing the same thing, complaining all the time, but not willing to actually take a risk and say, I want to do this and I'm going to jump, out of my comfort zone. And you'd be so surprised how often the bosses are desperate for signs of initiative. They want their employees to be forwarding plans and going, can I get this done? Not just bitching and moaning, and there's a weird disconnect. And that could be the fault often of the senior leadership not actively sort of seeding that thought in employees. But then even when I've tried it and seen it seeded, there still are folks who just aren't able to, for whatever reason, grab that, grasp the nettle or whatever you want to call it, have a crack at it, and there's no easy advice, and some of this could sound like platitudes, but just, I don't know, my observation often is that if you just have a crack and show you can do it, a lot of bosses will just be, oh my God, finally, someone's actually, doing something or have had a plan. Because bosses can't think of everything and can't do 100 different things.
And I think this reminds me of a story of some of the guys over at Australia Post. They wanted to start running hackathons, but they couldn't get buy-in for it from senior executives. Because senior executives, like you said, they want to see big plans. Like, what's this hackathon stuff? You're going to build tiny little things that don't actually achieve any outcome. At least that's their perception of it. So these guys actually spent some time after hours on weekends just building stuff that would solve customer problems or solve internal problems. Then they'd go back to said senior executives and demonstrate, hey, look what we built over the weekend. And they're like, oh, this is interesting. Really, just over the weekend, over 2 days? That's, with the right time, time-boxed environment, right resources, right people in the room, you can get stuff done.
You can.
And since then, they actually got buy-in to run monthly hackathons. Sponsored by the organization, get different people from different parts of the organization together and do stuff. But it was that whole thing where they took ownership. They showed, they didn't just tell or just say, this is what I want to do.
That's it.
And
they resist fear as well. So fear can be pervasive in organisations, even misguided, even in places where, it's very open and it's not command and control. It's very, modern and progressive. Somehow, somewhere, kernels of fear can grow where employees just think it almost becomes like gets a life of its own that, we can't do that. No, they won't agree to that. And yet, it's this.
And if we do it, are we going to stuff up and then who's
it's really hard to get. I mean, I don't want to say that, but it's really hard to fuck up enough to be fired if your heart's in the right. If the boss knows you were doing your damnedest to try and help the company, you don't get fired for that, right? You get fired for stealing or for physical abuse or nasty stuff. If you try something and it fails, but you've shown that you just did it in the right spirit, especially if you were, trying to create a new product and did something, people just, get fired for that. You get like, oh wow, they're really dedicated, and so breaking through that fear barrier also is important.
And I think that's where the culture of the organisation matters a lot. Is it a culture of blame if something goes wrong? Or is it a culture of accountability and ownership? It's like, okay, they did this is what they learned. It failed, but what can we take from those learnings and move forward? Whereas, I've worked with some organizations where they may have had a project that went through, say, your stage gate or waterfall process. It took a year or two, cost X number of millions of dollars, guaranteed to fuck up, did fuck up, and now people are too scared to do anything because of those big fuck ups.
Right, so that is a cultural issue. I found in all my career, and I've worked for, because I've worked inside organisations that have been around for a long time, Roadrunner, Warner Music, Village Roadshow. I mean, unless you're talking about the most cutting edge, progressive places, I don't buy into that fail fast idea, right? I mean, I know it's pervasive, and it probably is preached here.
Yes, it is.
But I get it, right? But I've never seen it like unfettered. I've never seen a blameless society where any fuck up is absolutely, people are cheering you because you made a mistake, right? I just don't. I know that maybe in Silicon Valley, but then I think a great example of a culture of fear or where it gets misguided is you hear about in Silicon Valley, they have this in a lot of in gaming as well, in companies that make video games, and companies that think themselves really progressive. They have a no set vacation policy.
Yeah.
You want to take time off? Just go.
Yeah.
Well, that's what a lot of nonsense that is.
Yeah.
Because it actually is worse.
People take less leave.
Because they take less leave, and then it's like, Jesus, where does Steve go?
Yeah.
Oh, he took a week off. Oh, that's nice. I've been working my ass off.
Yeah.
And so, even in the most progressive companies with policies like that, you still got, this pervasive kind of workaholic, fear-based thing, and people, will they get fired? I can't take time off because I might get fired.
Yeah.
So so old school companies have their issues and have, probably more command and control and less fail fast mentality, a little more old school, like don't fuck up.
Yeah.
Which is, where I've lived and breathed that world my whole career, where bosses aren't eager for you to make a mistake.
Yeah.
If you do, I've made millions, right? And some horrible ones, a couple of times I've offered my resignation because I've made disastrous mistakes where I just backed something to the hilt and it failed and then not only did the boss just sort of like up until the point that the kind of final kind of mistake was made, he was, you better not fuck this up. When I did, and I was like, please have mercy on me, he was, don't be ridiculous.
Yeah.
Get back to work.
Yeah.
So, you can still have you can still have a culture of forgiveness and failure, but maybe not everyone sort of holding hands and crying with joy because you failed.
Of course not. And not all failures are created equal. Like you could have a big failure that you should have seen coming 9 months ago.
Right.
Or you could design experiments for the purposes of just learning what your customer wants. And it could be that you've got an assumption, you've tested it, you spent $100. That's a failure, quote unquote, but you're learning from that. And it's controlled. But I guess on your point there, you had this project that you backed, and you backed it to the hill, like you said, and it didn't work out. But what if it did work out, right? So I had Annie Duke on the podcast last week. She was World Series of Poker champion. Oh, yeah. And she talked about this concept where we associate an outcome with the quality of the decision. And she told the story of Pete Carroll, who was he was the coach of the Seattle Seahawks. Yeah. They're in the Super Bowl, 4 seconds left. They're on the 1 yard line, third down. And instead of passing the ball back to the star running back to run over the line, guess what they did? They passed the ball. Oh. And it was intercepted. And this was called the worst play in NFL history the next day in the papers. But if that pass converted, like the chance of interception, she said, was something like 1%. Right. Totally different outcome. Right? So sometimes we need to be conscious that, hey, this person fucked up, but maybe it wasn't necessarily the decision. Maybe it was other factors outside of their control. Like, what was it?
Well, the problem, I guess, for me, and a couple of the worst ones I made, was where you're dealing with human beings because you're backing bands, and you're hoping that they're going to succeed.
Bands are like a marriage,
and there's 4 or 5 people in a band, and if they decide they don't want to play or don't do something, you're stuck.
Yep.
It's not a widget, it's a human being. And so lessons learned there about, when you're working with people, there's so many things can go wrong. Even if you think the result will be this, suddenly someone just says, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. And I was having this conversation this morning just around product development and how you could have a great product. Whiz-bang UX solves an actual problem, but people who you're selling to, they have entrenched habits, behaviors. They're quite happy. They don't want to change the way they do
Good enough is often good enough.
Exactly. And unless you're coming out there with something that's dramatically better, 10 times, 100 times better, they're not going to care. They've got enough to deal with as it is.
There's tons of, we know every day, probably whatever we use to do our email, there's probably 100 better email programs.
Probably.
Why would you change?
Yeah, exactly. Great point. So we might digress for a second and talk about emerging technologies. Yeah. So, we're working together on the Xperience Accelerator, which is bringing Village Roadshow together with startups working on VR, AR applications in the entertainment industry. Maybe we'll talk about VR and AR for a second. What's your view insofar as these two technologies and how we'll see them play out potentially, say, in the next 5 years?
Well, it's interesting because I went to CES this year. I go about every 2 years because I think every 1 year the changes aren't enough to see, So, but what was shocking this year was I didn't feel like VR had moved the needle at all in the 2 years since I'd been, and I'd gone the one, say, 3 or 4 years ago when Oculus Rift was being launched at CES, and wandering around the VR section of CES, which is supposed to be the ground zero of all things VR, and I was just, it was shit.
Yeah.
The headsets were still heavy and clunky and sore on the bridge of your nose and fogging up, and the same clown walking on his walking shoes on that walkable treadmill thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, every year that guy's on there with his headset and a gun.
Yeah.
And it just, why nothing's changed? And it was very disappointing and to me it just feels like we're at a moment where are the lightweight glasses?
Yeah.
Where are the untethered? We've seen some untethered now, but still not of a level that I would think. Where you expect in other forms of technology that sort of exponential Moore's law type growth, incredible development and growth.
Yeah.
And yet here I just keep thinking, well, Sony PlayStation VR hasn't changed. Nothing. And is it a chicken and egg? Like there's not enough software and enough interest, so they're not investing. But then
not enough content.
Facebook have billions of bucks. Maybe they should be doing something good for the world, getting VR moving.
Then compromising
spying on us.
50 million accounts.
So it just seems to me like I feel fearful that it's stagnated a bit. So I remember 2.5 years ago getting Oculus Rift for myself. And just be, this is amazing. My own personal experience has been, it sat in a box last year.
Yeah.
I never get it out really.
Yeah.
Part of the Accelerator Lab has been to say to the VR and AR community in Australia, show us what's good. Capture the things that we would love to bring to our business, because we believe that there's somewhat of a stagnation. We want the companies that are involved in the acceleration to show us something different and not prove us wrong, but give us some real injection of life into this. Yeah. Now, this is an opinion of just my opinion, and of course, listeners are people. What the fuck do you know, John? But it's just my sense of the zeitgeist and the sort of feeling I got out of CES is that the hardware in particular hasn't progressed in that sort of trajectory I would have thought.
The exponential growth.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I feel like a year or two ago, everywhere you went, it was just on the tip of everyone's tongue. VR. And then came and went that moment. An AR kit was going to be another big deal. Apple had AR. Well, how often are we using AR on our phones? It's something, there's still something missing in perhaps the UX of AR and VR. There's something missing in the hardware. It still feels too difficult and challenging and not as easy as just opening an app. And that's the bridge we've got to get across for VR and AR to really become ubiquitous and pervasive. I mean, my dream is I really do think, and I say this to a lot of folks, that within 5 to 10 years, you and I right now would be wearing a pair of glasses that everyone starts to wear. And we can just, this is AR, we can just, I can look at this microphone in front of us and it'll recognise the make and model, and in the top right corner, a HUD will show me it's the 2012 microphone, here's the specs, and with a blink I could buy it for myself on Amazon.
Yep.
Or anything I want to identify, if I'm walking in the park and I pull a leaf, I can get a botany report when the camera scans the leaf and I get it on my lens. That's exactly what everyone wants. I mean, Magic Leap shows that kind of dream. Yeah. Where are they? But that's what I think people are waiting for, is this AR moment where we're seeing, you never forget anyone's name, because you walk into a party and everyone who's prepared to offer like a profile, like a LinkedIn or whatever, just above their head, their name is there.
It's an interesting one though. I had a conversation with Jeremy Bailenson from the Stanford VR lab, and his view on VR was, no, it's not progressing at an exponential rate. He seems to feel that it's progressing at the rate that it should. But he compared it to, say, the last 20 or 30 years, like see where we started and where we are now in terms of the immersion. Yeah. But also, he was more concerned about, we don't want it to progress too quickly to the point where everybody's got headsets, because we don't know what the implications are going to be on social relationships, interaction.
Didn't stop Silicon Valley with social media. Now we've seen.
Well, this is true, but now we're seeing some of
that's been for people.
Exactly. Now we're seeing a lot of pushback from Sean Parker basically saying Facebook's exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology, and it's who's it? Mark Benioff, Salesforce. Yeah. Facebook should be regulated like tobacco. Yeah. It's just such an addictive platform.
You're right. And I mean, I went to a thing 2 years ago where a professor, a VR genius who's been pioneering VR for 25 years, who's one of the first guys, basically said children under 15 shouldn't use a VR headset because it can mess with their synapses and all this. And this is the bloke he's like a neuroscience professor, been living and breathing VR for 25 years. Yeah. Like, holy shit, who's making this clear to people?
Well, and a lot of the product designers from, say, Silicon Valley and places like that, they don't let their kids use those products because they have intentionally designed them in a way where they are addictive, where there are triggers built into
the Tim Cook not letting his nephews. Yeah. I mean, there's something scary going on.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether it's actually, I don't believe that, gentlemen, that they're pacing themselves with VR, because if someone thought in this competitive world that they could make that quick and that lightweight, awesome headset and sell it cheap, they'd do it. I don't think they go, oh no, it's bad for humanity. I'm not going to do it. I've got a feeling that they'll just do that.
But they did, regardless of whether or not there are social implications. You just don't think
there's too many companies out there competing. Whoever can get the edge will get it. It's like AI.
Yeah.
Nick Bostrom's book about AI is one of the greatest books I've ever read.
Superintelligence.
And that book, when I read it, I barely could read it because it kept dropping it every time I read 20 pages.
I had to read it 3 times before I could really understand it.
But it's a life-changing book.
Yeah.
And what does it talk about? It talks about, that we could be right on the cusp of an existential disaster. Mm-hmm. And this guy is not some clown in a bunker in Milwaukee or whatever, frightened of the future. This is a fair income physicist, futurist dude. And yet, do we think that any current AI, any company is going to halt their AI development because of this stuff? No.
This is a concern, and a lot of people who downplay the effects of, say, AI, what it might mean for us, say, oh no, that's years away, 10 years away, and I think Bostrom talks about it in the book. He said it could come tomorrow, and once it comes, we could move from general to...
nanosecond, from general to super in a nanosecond.
Yeah.
And then you've got, and now with neural learning, network learning that they've just been cultivating, it's learning and teaching itself to learn. Yeah. You're thinking, okay, so... What was it, 2028? They're talking about as the median year?
2028, some people say 2049.
Yeah, 2049. There's some median year that's within our lifetime that scares the shit out of me. So, it's not doomsaying, but you just think, these things are moving really fast, and I don't think any of these players in this world are, ultimately going to take what's good for humanity approach. No, I think you're going to take, this is exciting and great, it's going to make us tons of money.
Yeah.
It's cynical, but I think that.
No, look, hopefully that's not the case for everyone, but there will be all it takes is one company who has their back pocket, who prioritizes their back pocket above everything else to push us in that direction.
That's right.
And I guess that's why maybe in some respects, slower moving tech could potentially be a better thing for humanity.
Maybe true. I disagree.
Cool, so we've got about 10 minutes left, so not even. We've got 7 minutes left, so let's see how much value we can extract in the next 7 minutes, John. Outside of AR and VR, what sort of other, say, emerging technologies are you excited by? Especially as far as media and entertainment is concerned, because we're seeing a bit of a shift towards personalization. Content creation has been democratized in many ways, where YouTube stars have millions of subscribers. Guys like Joe Rogan get 3 million downloads an episode on his podcast. I'm recording this podcast from a meeting room. It's going to get binned around the world. Mobile, streaming, all these different sort of factors influencing the industry. What does that mean for incumbent players, and how might they respond?
Well, what I said earlier about the AR dream I have is where I think, I think once that's solved, that AR world perception piece, that to me is the biggest development in technology that could occur, in the next 10 years. That it could be, I think it would be more ubiquitous and more powerful and potent than phones or anything, because it now becomes just your view of the world. You every time you look at something, a car, what make is it? Who owns it? A document, from whatever you eyeball on the document, throwing spreadsheets up onto the, up on a sort of AR sort of three-dimensional wall, sharing a vision where you and I could be talking, and I could say, check that out, and check out the cat. My cat did something funny this morning, and I just project a 3D vision of the cat, grooming itself, and you can see it as well, and we can walk around it. It's just a 3D hologram essentially. Well, not hologram, but I guess it is. But our eyes are both seeing, even though it doesn't actually, it's not physically projected on that space, but we're both sharing that experience of something that we can both see. And to me, that is so paradigm shifting that's the most enormous thing that could change in technology in 5 to 10 years. I mean, video games now become, you talk about zero latency in the places where you can sort of put a VR headset on and wander around. But what about if you could just walk around in the park and suddenly monsters are coming out from behind trees because that's what you're seeing? I mean, it's just, that is the watershed moment of tech development is AR. So I fully committed and believe that. And I think that it's then becomes part of social and games and how we interact with each other, everything. And to me, that's the catch-all. I mean, the next thing, or the other big tech that seems not to have entered the mainstream yet, but will be a big one, is 3D printing. Printing steel and metal and things like that we're seeing now increasingly, rather than just weird little plastic guys, where you can start to just I need a coffee cup drinking flask to take to work. I'll just print it back in half an hour. All right, there we go.
Yeah.
So that stuff where you now are making physical goods locally at home. The best sci-fi books that I read are always about interstellar ships that actually have their own 3D printing kit for von Neumann probes or whatever that can create their own things and then send them further. So that is a tech that obviously is going to go places.
I think we've seen that in the International Space Station, I think about a year ago, where there were Sense 3D models. They're able to print them up there, and actually print out a tool and fix something on the space station.
So much better and cheaper. Mining an asteroid and getting the minerals and metal and making the things you need for spaceflight on the actual moon or the asteroid is exactly what we have to do, rather than all the payload you need just to send all that heavy stuff up.
All right, well, with 3 minutes to go, John, we're going to jump into our lightning round. 3 questions, 1 minute answer per question.
All right,
let's do this. Question number 1.
Yeah.
If you could work for any organization at any stage of the company lifecycle, so whether it's Apple in 1978, Steve Jobs was in a garage, who would it be and why?
I would have probably worked for one of the record companies as an A&R guy, maybe in the early 70s. And
which label?
Maybe Warner Brothers. And just not because there's the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but it's more the rock and roll part. Just the idea of Island Records as well. Signing a band. One of my favourite bands is Free. Signing a band like Free and just being there, some of those festivals and being involved in that early proto rock and metals phase of music. To me, just it's golden period. And I'd love to have been around for that.
Fantastic. Question 2 is, if you could ask anyone a question, dead or alive, who would it be and what would you ask?
Oh man, that's get me in hot water.
I usually use a trigger around, who did I look up to when I was a kid? Any big idols?
Well, one sounds a bit obscure, but I've always been a huge fan of 2 Roman emperors, Diocletian and another one, Julian. And Julian was a pagan emperor who tried to stem the tide of Christianity and post Constantine. And Julian was a hero, and recently reading about him in one of my favourite books is Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, and reading his chapter or 2 on Julian again, I'd just love to go back and ask him a bunch of questions like, why did you make that decision when you could have, just understanding his motivations and his rationales for putting his neck out to try to defend what he believed in paganism and his beliefs. Some of the decisions he made were stupid, but because they were self-defeating, but just I'd love to know more about that.
Yeah.
So not that sexy an answer, but I guess it's a bit of a nerd's answer.
It is, but they're the best kind of those overarching philosophical sort of questions around why did you do that? That decision making that took him off on a totally different trajectory. Speaking of pagans, there is an awesome Vikings exhibit over at the Melbourne Museum at the moment.
Is that right? I have to go check
that out. I was there on the weekend.
So awesome.
Old swords that they've dug up in Norway and England.
I will go to that. I love that.
It's freaking epic. And the last question: what rituals or routines do you have to stay on top of your game?
Well, the main one is I cycle to work.
Nice.
I have done.
How many Ks is that?
It's about 20 in and 20 out.
Beautiful.
So I'm on the bike about 2 hours a day.
Yep.
And I listen to books while I'm on the bike.
Yep.
So I get my reading
Just
done.
one ear, so not the
I can always
ear.
and I do actually wear basically clothed in battle armour because I've got a special jacket. I've broken a lot of bones.
Yeah.
So I've got a special jacket that protects me, and I'm riding basically a big heavy dad bike. It's not like a fast racing bike.
Yeah.
Way beyond that. But really just doing that, keeping to those sort of rituals where you stay fit and healthy, and it means that when I get home also, having had that hour on the bike, I can put aside work. I've had time to meditate, as in reading is for me meditation, so I can get my purge the day in a way, and then get home with my kids and wife and not bring baggage in.
Yeah.
And that's a really important ritual to just stay on top of the game. If I've been injured or sick or travel a lot and I can't get that done, getting a bit edgy and feel a bit murky and cloudy. So keeping a fitness ritual like that, but it's more than fitness. It's the meditative quality of just zoning and listening to a book, and it's very good.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more on that. And whenever I travel, I take a copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations with me.
Oh yeah, that's
just
cool.
read a few passages before bed or in the morning every day, just to keep me balanced and centered.
Yeah, sure.
Otherwise, your brain just flooded with thoughts, especially if you're addicted to Facebook and social media.
I'm not addicted to Facebook and social
I know you're
media.
not. I know you're not. But for people who are constantly checking their phones, like
no, it's horrible. I'm addicted to video games.
Yeah.
So I do. Well, the other ritual I have that whenever I get it, like especially if I'm on a plane or I've got hours to burn, I'm obsessed with the game Civilization. So Civilization 6 is the latest, and I've already put maybe 250 hours into it.
Yeah, that's based around the Roman Emperor, right?
No, you can play a Roman Emperor, but you can basically start from whatever it is, 4000 BC right through to 2100 AD, and you basically build a civilization from scratch. So I just get obsessed with that game. And can find 4 hours gets burnt, before I got up to the loo or had a drink, anything, just obsessed. Yeah. So I find that pretty good, more for fun's sake.
Yeah, I get that with certain TV series. Like I try to watch maybe a TV series once every, say, 6 months, otherwise I'll get sucked in. But now I find myself, all right, one episode, if you're going to watch, one, and move on. No, because Netflix will just start playing the next episode immediately without even letting you process the previous episode. And if it's got a cliffhanger ending, you're very much likely to keep going. So I just say one episode, turn it off.
Yeah,
awesome, mate. Well, thanks so much for giving up the time to appear on Future Squared today. I think our listeners will get a lot out of this conversation. If they want to check out the Xperience Accelerator, they can head over to xperienceaccelerator.cc. That's Xperience starting with an X. If they want to connect with yourself, John, where can they go?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Yep.
And always, I do look at the messages that come in, so you can look me up. I guess there'll be the notes of the podcast. My name's there, so you'll find me there. That's probably the best way.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for giving up the time. Cheers.
Hi guys, Steve again. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to discuss episodes like this one, request guests for new episodes, propose questions, and access exclusive podcast-related content, join the brand new Future Squared Facebook group. Just search for the Future Squared group on Facebook or visit bit.ly/Future Squared group. That's bit.ly/Future Squared group. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, please take a minute to like, share, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play. It goes a long way to giving the podcast the exposure it needs so I can continue bringing you guests and conversations of the highest caliber. This episode was powered by Collective Campus. Until next time, Future Squared is out.